So, Heather, in the first hour, you and I were talking about some of the elements of this really blockbuster testimony by Michael Cohen on Wednesday, which some of it was just pure, we got an insight and a validation for what we imagine Donald Trump is like in private. Turns out he's just, a slightly more vulgar version of himself as we see him in public. No surprise there. There was some stuff that I think, opened up a lot of legal jeopardy, frankly, for Donald Trump. We will get to that. But before we do, this moment with Michael Cohen, where, I think this ties in. His folks were survivors of the Holocaust. And sometimes with guys like this, it's not until they see a side that in some ways implicates them before they start to sort of have empathy with other things. Because obviously Michael Cohen was exposed to Donald Trump's racism for a long time. And but maybe it was watching Nazis marching around, basically telling the Jews to go home or whatever it is, that no Jews are going to take our place or whatever it was, blood and soil. That he started to sort of maybe expand his sense of empathy. But here he is in his testimony this week talking about Donald Trump as a racist.
Mr. Trump is a racist. The country has seen Mr. Trump court white supremacists and bigots. You have heard him call poorer countries shitholes. In private, he is even worse. He once asked me if I could name a country run by a black person that wasn't a shithole. This was when Barack Obama was president of the United States. And while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that only black people could live that way. And he told me that black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid. And yet, I continued to work for him.
There it is. And this ended up basically not just as something that was revelatory of Donald Trump, but it was also something that revealed something about the Republican lawmakers, right? Mark Meadows then goes ahead and basically puts on what Congresswoman Tlaib said it was racist, and I have to agree with her. Just, Heather, walk us through what happened.
Well, when this came out, obviously the Republicans had prepared for this. That Cohen had released his testimony the night before, and so it was obvious that there was, this question of Trump's racism was going to come up. But it had been reported earlier that he was going to talk about this as well, so they may have had some more lead time than that. What Meadows did, and I just thought it was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I think everybody was taken aback. What the hell? He had Lynn Patton, who is now with the Office of Health and Human Services doing something. I don't really know what it was. And she used to be a party planner who was part of the Eric Trump, orbit of the Trump family. I think she's good friends with his wife, Lara. In any case, the camera turns to Meadows, who is the head of the Freedom Caucus. Probably everybody knows that. But he's an extremely close congressional confidant, what I call one of Trump's major henchmen in the House. He is very, very close to the family, and he brings up Lynn Patton, and the camera turns toward him, and Lynn Patton is standing right over his shoulder, which, if everybody didn't see this, if you picture the committee hearings, which we've all seen a million times, it's a big row of people, and there's all the staff members sitting behind him, and there is Lynn Patton just standing there. It was very strange. And he goes on to make this big speech about how, the fact that this woman was part of Trump's, circle, and she wasn't part of his inner circle. She was kind of on the periphery. The fact that she was part of his circle meant that Trump couldn't possibly be racist. This is the old, it's Trump himself on the campaign trails. Look at my African American out there, because he had one black guy in the audience. So, this is how they think, and it is racist. It's old-fashioned. It's the kind of thing my dad back in the '60s used to say. It's this very kind of antediluvian attitude that you expect politicians on the national level, at least, to have understood by now. Clearly, recent events have shown they don't, but nonetheless, you would expect someone in his position to know that.
This is a conservative tick on some level. I mean, it really is. I mean, I remember going to Glenn Beck's 9/12 rally, or one of those rallies 6, 7, 8 years ago, and literally there was virtually no people of color at this rally. That's not necessarily something surprising, but I saw one, and he was with a white guy who had a sign pointing at the black guy saying, "Do I look racist?" And because they're friends. And I was just like, this is unbelievable. I mean, this is like, this person is being used as a prop. And there were people lining up, and folks can go look for this this video. I think it's on my YouTube channel. It's, I can't remember what it was titled, but they can search around for Glenn Beck, Sam Seder, "Do I Look Racist?" or something. And there are literally like half a dozen people taking photos of the guy with the sign standing next to his white friend. And I was just like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And the idea that that Meadows would, best case scenario, the woman was happy to do it. Worst case scenario, she's worried about her job, right? And she is pulled up there as a prop. And later in the hearing, Congresswoman Tlaib, recently elected from Michigan, she said, "Look, as a woman of color, I found that to be racist." And he took offense, Mark Meadows, and said to Cummings, "I'm not racist. I have nieces and nephews who are people of color." And Cummings was in an odd position, I guess, and he sort of like tamped everything down. But it was very weird, and I couldn't believe it.
Well, I wish I could say I couldn't believe it, but the old, hey, that's a good one there. It's the rest of them that are bad concept among conservatives is not that unusual. And of course, they're obviously very, upset at the idea. How can I be a racist? Because I like a couple of black guys. I mean, I know them and everything. They don't really understand the big picture there, and it's very hard to penetrate that. But Meadows is a little bit more of a cynical operator than just that. I do think that's part of what he is. But this is a guy who said back in 2013 or 14, he was tweeting stuff about sending Obama back to Kenya, right? And
he's on. There's multiple videos of him out there saying that. And apparently he's responded to it and said, "Well, I was in the midst of a heated campaign."
Oh, okay, then. I guess that's fine. It's ridiculous. And not only that, I do think, and I noticed this, I was tweeting it throughout the hearing, Meadows was working himself up he wanted to have some kind of a meltdown. This was part of his plan. And I think he was kind of adopting the Lindsey Graham sort of gambit from the Kavanaugh hearings, where he was trying to find a reason to start pounding his fist and declaring the Democrats are un-American and saying that, you'll pay for this and doing all that. And he wasn't really given an opportunity to do that quite the way he wanted to. So when Congresswoman Tlaib brought this up, this was the closest he could come, and he ended up just looking, to me anyway, he looked, very sort of red-faced, but kind of weak and teary, and, it didn't really come up. And then, of course, Cummings, who I actually think he was put in an odd position, but I think he handled it well. I think he just kind of, okay, all right. It was just sort of like, everybody, pull yourself together, Mark, okay?
Right, seriously.
Take a chill pill, because this is really stupid. And it was at the end of a very long day, and it was, it was as if he seemed to be more whining than indignant, which was the Lindsey Graham thing that caught everybody's attention. So I do think
rare.
that part of that was cynical. Yeah,
right. Of course,
yeah, exactly.
So rare for conservatives to get whiny and quasi indignant. All right, look, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we got more to talk about. There was a lot of reason to believe that that Michael Cohen offered the beginnings of what we'll ultimately see will be criminal offenses. And, of course, we still have to talk about the big collusion question. We'll be right back. Sam Seder, Ring of Fire Radio, right back more with Digby.